Hey guys,
Hey,
welcome.
Liran. Hello.
Hi, Leran.
Hey Thomas, hey Christoph, hey everybody in the audience. I'm always obsessed that I have no idea how many people watching. So sometimes I end up with hundreds of people, and sometimes it's just me singing in the shower, but kind of never know. So it's great having you here. So I'm Liran. I'm an architect at Dynatrace. Christoph is another one of our architects leading observability as a whole, I think. And
Yes.
Thomas, you are a product manager, and kind of how would you describe your role?
Exactly. Yeah, I am product manager around distributed tracing at Dynatrace. So bringing forward the product, everything around tracing here. I'm with the company already longer. So started now 10 years ago in the pre-sales organization even. So was also always closely working with customers, bringing them the whole product closer and switched over to product management a few years ago. And yeah, happy to be here. The reason is that we just launched, on the one hand side, a new distributed tracing app, where we are very proud of, but the whole new trace experience that we now brought to Dynatrace just a few weeks ago, this is now publicly available.
It's good being here. By the way, every time I'm at dance race, I kind of feel like I'm new. Now I've been here for 18 months now, and still every time I'm in a call, there is somebody who's been here for 10 years or 15 years. Everybody's been here for 10 years. I don't know, it's crazy. It's a unique company. Uh, so as you mentioned, we're here to talk about the distributed tracing app and especially answer your questions. So everybody in the audience right now, feel free to send us questions, comments, thoughts, any feedback, anything you want. You can do it over uh, Facebook and LinkedIn, and I have no idea what channels we're streaming on, but I'm sure somebody you guys know because you're there. And before we dive in, let's maybe do a quick intro, kind of so you can see what the new app looks like and what's the new distributed experience in Dynatrace, and then we can kind of start diving in. Now, as you see the demo, feel free to start asking questions and send them our way.
Cool. Then let's quickly share a short video. It's also the welcome video that is included in the app itself. So I just let it play and talk a little bit to it because it highlights the biggest improvements that have been, or the new things that have been made here. So it's built to really make it easy to optimize outliers, optimize the performance, but also the failure and performance behavior over time. The whole app is interactive. You can interact with almost any element that is there. We have the facets on the left side that allow to quickly filter for relevant information. Like here, we're filtering for just traces in our Kubernetes prod environment. You already get an overview of what is happening there. And what I like a lot is our new visualization to make it easy to find performance outliers. So here we are now focusing on traces that took longer than 4 to 7 seconds. So it's very easy to really find the important information in it. So now, as you can see, what is also great is the new grouping functionality. So you can use any attribute that is available on the trace to group by. Here we group by request status and endpoint. So we can easily see that, yeah, it seems in this environment, cart and cart checkout are failing. You can interact with all these elements. You can just click on it, filter for it. And what is cool, you can very easily include noise. So you can remove now the 200, so to focus really on the failures here. And then you can just even go deeper in context. So you can work in everything like in an IDE here, find out, oh yeah, place orders is failing. Let's see, why is it failing? Let's dive deeper to the exception. You have the exception messages in here. We have even the stack traces in here. So a lot of details, especially for developers, are just below of the fingertip and available to be investigated in context. So,
Pretty cool stuff. And as you were saying, oh, Kerry, you beat me to it. I wanted to answer that one. But yeah, we got our first question. As you were demoing, it's about whether it's live will be recorded. And as usual, all lives are recorded and made available online for viewing. But you obviously can only ask the question while the live is ongoing. So great intro by Thomas. Before we dive into all the, I have so many questions, but kind of Christoph, what's your favorite feature in the new app?
So generally, first of all, let me say I've been very much involved in developing a new architecture for distributed tracing, including the new app, but also a new unified storage that's behind of it that brings all monitoring signals into one place, make them accessible. And the storage is a great piece we did there because it's schemaless and index free. It means we automatically can efficiently search for all attributes without any configuration, whatsoever needed. It also means for us we can always extend our data, the trace data, by new fields, new attributes, and still be able to efficiently search and group for that data. Which brings me to the app, where we have the filter field, we have the facets, and we have those grouping features that, and that's my favorite feature, work on any attribute that's on a span. Whether it's a predefined by Dynatrace, whether it's attributes that OpenTelemetry brings, or attributes that you would configure yourself, custom attributes, and so on. You can efficiently group and filter for all of those. That's my favorite thing.
Let's just wait for a second because we're getting feedback from behind us, the stage that LinkedIn might be frozen. So if any of you can still hear us, please send some questions. Tell us if you hear us. Maybe your screen sharing broke the internet, Thomas.
Oh, that's interesting. I stopped screen sharing. Should I start share again? Let me see. Perhaps we can do something here.
Omer, Kerry, any thoughts about next steps at the moment, or?
I try to share in the app again. Let's see. Is it now working again?
Anybody in the audience, if you can hear us, please send us a message. Rumor is that Facebook is working. I'm not sure if LinkedIn is working as well. That's a first for me.
I hope they have good monitoring to identify and fix the problem
I hope
fast.
they're not our customers. YouTube is fine as well. Okay, so if you guys are still listening to us, right, and you want YouTube and Facebook are working well, so you can follow us in the Dynatrace channels there, and let's kind of move forward. I hope for the best. Now, briefly before this all connectivity issues, Christoph, you mentioned that the power of Grail and the power of the app is being able to do arbitrary processing and arbitrary querying and analytic on any field. And by the way, I thought this is worthwhile mentioning. This is apply both for one agent and Dynatrace tracing, as well as OpenTelemetry and anything else you send our way. So it doesn't matter if you're using the one agent for the Dynatrace provided tracing, or if you're just integrating with OpenTelemetry in some manner, you can slice and dice those attributes however you see fit.
It was one of the design principles of the new architecture is to unify one agent and OpenTelemetry data model as much as possible, so we can analyze it in one set, make one app, have the same set of analytics queries behind the scenes that work on consistently on OpenTelemetry and one agent data. And so as a customer, you don't have to worry about any discrepancy there anymore at all.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, I know you are a power user, obviously, of traces in Dynatrace, and you have tons of advanced use cases for kind of how can you directly access the traces data and do awesome stuff with it, analyze problems and build dashboards and what's not. But before we dive into those super advanced stuff, and I would love to hear questions from the audience. By the way, guys, if you've managed to reconnect, if you're hearing us, please send in your question. And I don't know if Dynatrace is monitoring LinkedIn. I can check it later. So kind of, Thomas, from your experience, what are some of the favorite features customers are quoting when they see the new product?
Oh, definitely. So what I like most, what I've shown this, is also the app to not just have this data model, which is critical in the background, but making this visible. So to really be able to have a high data density, the new app and the new app framework allows us to really, yeah, use the full real estate of the screen to just, yeah, interact with the data that is there. I think that is also what is resonating very well. So when you see, okay, a specific information like health checks, yeah, everything that is healthy, you can very easily remove it. Any attribute that you want to not see, to focus on what is really meaningful, you can just click there and say filter out, remove there. And that's extremely helpful and is bringing customers very quickly um, to what they're really looking for.
Mhm.
The second point is people stay in context. So people, you do not need to switch between different screens. So it's now feels a little bit like an IDE. So you can just, yeah, make the chart smaller, increase the real estate for the trace, and that's really great. And I love working even also with it. Yeah.
Mhm. Uh, how far can people tailor their experiences? How much control do they have? You mentioned the table. Uh, what can they filter by? What can they group by? Kind of what
Yeah.
other bells and whistles are there for
Yeah, that's
customizing
that's
the
a
experience?
great question from your side, because we also in the beginning we need to make a little bit a trade-off here. So as Christoph mentioned, on the one hand side, now all attributes on a trace are accessible, and just when we're looking into our own self-monitoring environment, we have thousands of different attributes. So it's also depending then what is relevant for most of the users. So we have a set of how the table is looking like that is there, but you can quickly add any column to the table, what is
Mhm.
relevant. So if you have a specific span attribute that you collect from your application that is relevant for your case, you can just add it to the table. You can add it to the facets. You can easily just look for traces where a specific attribute is set. You can also remove traces where this attribute would have a specific value, and this makes it extremely valuable and yeah, customizable here in that case.
Mhm. They have. Uh, I know there are a lot of new kind of upcoming third generation apps in the Dynatrace platform and a lot of changes going on. And which apps are you find themselves most closely used with the new Traces app, going to and from the app? Kind of how are users using it?
Yeah, that's a very good point. So tracing is very closely related to the services app. So that's also what we, yeah, make easy for users. So you will always find at the one hand side which services are the traces are traversing. So you can easily filter for the services. Also, the endpoint of the services are there as a primary connector to the service health, because typically a microservice you see the throughput, the health state for specific endpoints, and then you want to get quickly to the relevant traces for that. So here it's very easily to jump back and forth. You can go to the service and see if it's really healthy or if it's unhealthy, and from the services app to the tracing app. Another app that is closely related is the Kubernetes app that was launched a year ago about. So here we could already get lots of experiences from the developers how to build apps on the new app framework, and you can easily jump then to see, for instance, yeah, just traces that traverses a specific Kubernetes namespace, traces that are processed by a specific Kubernetes workload, to really, yeah, to have on the one hand side the filter perspective, but also to jump over and to open the app in context if you find something relevant here. I think these
Mhm.
are the two most connected apps right now. And we're also working further to get more and more apps connected, like, for instance, the debugging app that is coming out quite soon, and also
Mhm.
everything around from the real user monitoring that where also you can expect some additional apps quite soon.
Yeah, we definitely have some apps coming down the pipeline. Live debugging is just going to be GA in a couple of weeks. It's interesting, but interesting you mention it. But one of the things I was very surprised to see in Dynatrace traces is how rich in code context there is, and how much it's not just about trace names. You have file names and function names and So much information about your code right there in the trace itself.
Exactly. So that's also where the facets came into the game that you have seen in the video on the left side to also guide users through where would you expect specific information pieces. So for instance, oh yeah, what are the information, what are the attributes that are relevant when I'm looking for database statements, for instance. There we would have, yeah, the database system, we would have query texts to really get already to guide users what is relevant here from this perspective.
You understand all the
maybe,
endless options of how to query.
yeah, maybe to add to that, the way I see distributed tracing today is, of course, obviously, the benefit of a distributed trace is to observe requests flowing through your system. That's the whole point, right? But also, you get at those points where the instrumentation is happening, it is like a very rich structured log that you get automatically. Let's say for every database call that's instrumented, you get a span. And it's kind of like a structured log that gives you all the details of that database invocation, right? And you can also use just that to analyze, let's say, all database invocations in your service and plot out the P99 of the duration of those database calls, even without the distributed part. Of course, if you then from those slow database calls, you filter for the slowest, you can go and say what's the trace ID, and then you see the whole distributed part of it as well. So it's like a structured log with a horizontal or distributed context as well.
How far can I take this in the app versus what do I have to do by myself in DQL?
Yeah, Thomas, you want to take that?
Yeah, good point. So you can use, as mentioned, any attribute in the app. Where it then comes to use DQL is more when you want to combine it with other data right now. So when I want, for instance, I would just want to filter for traces where we see a specific log message in. So when you do it in the other direction, or when you want to have some examples from a metric that you want to join in here, this could work. That's the main. When you then want to go beyond that, when you have more advanced use cases here.
Yeah. So all the fancy use cases Christoph mentioned about pulling all my database queries, slicing them by latency, whatever, I can do that directly in the app. I don't have to do anything else. I can even group them by services or queries or anything else. I want all directly from the app with a handful of clicks. So beside, but you mentioned logs, and I know one of the key feature requests we're having is about when can we see logs in the Traces app. I think it's one of our missing launch features.
Exactly. That is the next big thing. So as some of you may know, logs in the classic perspective, we show them directly in the trace. So you will see the related logs for a part of the trace in the classic app already. And that's what the team is now working. Yeah, what looks already quite good. I think a first version is even activated already in our playground, where we enable the investigation of the logs that are related to a trace directly in context of the app. And this is what we also see is the most requested functionality here, that users and especially developers want to have a quick way to investigate. Oh yeah, I see this failed request. Oh, the trace goes over there. Oh, which log? What can I see in the log to really find out why a specific problem was happening? Yeah, and right now, as it looks right now, in a few sprints, this should be ready and be integrated in the app.
Awesome. And what other hotly requested features did we recently deliver or upcoming soon?
So what was delivered, I think, was now very big, was that since 2 weeks it's possible to do the to not just have the app as interface to access your trace data. We released the new tracing experience that gives our customers access to DQL, so to the underlying data model. They can now use a fetch span everywhere in the product. You can use it to put some data on a dashboard, or you can use it to to have a structured troubleshooting process with multiple DQLs. in a notebook, share it with your coworkers. They can then continue working on it. I think that was the biggest release that we now had just here on March 11th. Next step, as mentioned, is the log integration. We are also working now on improving also the performance of the app itself. So there will be some big changes to make it faster. Yeah, Liran, you helped a lot with that recently. So I think that's also to make it really fast and slick the app to get this in. And then additionally functionalities. For instance, right now, it works great to have an end-to-end trace when we have the same trace ID. But OpenTelemetry and the data model is also supporting span links to connect traces that are logically the same trace but have different trace IDs depending on the technology. I think that's a big improvement that will come to really then show a full end-to-end trace, even if it's when we have different trace IDs here in the app. That are the biggest steps that are now coming in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Also, guys, don't hesitate. Ask questions. We're here for you. It's a unique opportunity. Trust me, those guys know a lot about tracing in Dynatrace and in general. So really, really the people to ask. But maybe we can kind of circle back to what we briefly mentioned about DQL. Kind of, Christoph, I know you're a huge fan. And kind of, what are some of the coolest things you've seen with the raw DQL access for traces?
Well, for me, the biggest part is actually to be able to on the fly extract time series on read, right? So of course, everybody knows metrics. Metrics are being produced somewhere and they're time aggregated, and they have the typical cardinality problem. So on a time series is very cost efficient, but if you blow it up with too many dimensions that have high cardinality in combination, it gets very inefficient and expensive. So what you can do now with the spans and any kind of events with lots of attributes on them in Dynatrace is on the fly extract the time series. So it's a DQL command that says make time series out of this, and that it on the fly creates that line, that chart, those bars over time for you. And there you can use high cardinality attributes. That means user IDs or session IDs, whatever. You can filter them out or you can group by them and find those that make up whatever you are looking for, right? The slowest ones, for example.
So essentially you can build the time series and filter it either before you build it or after you build it with any piece of data. So you don't have to pre-design all of your dimensions and kind of manage the cost of that. You can, after the fact, get all of those dozens of attributes that we've mentioned that are not indexed but accessible. And then you can use any one of those or any combination of those to filter the data you want, make it into a time series, and then split it even further based on your needs.
Exactly. And the point is you can do this after the fact. So I can do this now for the last 10 days or the last 30 days, wherever I have the data for, right? And manipulate what question I'm asking against the data on the fly without needing to know in advance. Metrics still make sense. They are much more, cost efficient. So if you know upfront what you need, it's still fine to have a metric. Extract a metric from your spans even. But this is a materialized metric. You only have it from the point on you have defined it. Yeah. And after the fact on read metric has the advantage that you can ask any question, even if you didn't know you need to ask the Git before in terms of a troubleshooting case.
Yeah. So for alerting, for dashboarding, materialized metrics are the way to go because they provide you with the most cost-efficient solution, especially as you're recurring them over and over and over again, which can add up. But for exploratory analysis and after the fact, then that's where dynamic time series are a huge win.
Exactly.
I think what fits well to that discussion is also that now, since the release of traces in Grail, all the trace data is also going over the Dynatrace open pipeline. So what you just mentioned, Liran, to materialize a metric is now easily possible, just also to set up a pipeline rule. So when you have a specific attribute on your span, you can also just define a rule in the pipeline. Right now, just counter metrics are possible for spans, but quite soon we will open this to have here more different metric types that are possible out of this.
And maybe want to point out one more thing. So traces are stored now in Grail, our unified store for observability, along with also logs, events, and our topology model. And in with the query language, you can now join all those together. So you can use join keys like a trace ID or some infrastructure identifiers to join over to those data. So I could, for example, ask a question against my requests and say, can you give me the duration or the response time of these requests and split them by some information I have in the topological model, like which Java libraries are loaded in some process, or which CPU model even this ran on. So I can join this together and then use it in my as a splitting criteria or as a filter criteria in my query. So I think by having a unified store and a unified query language for all monitoring signals, this enables quite some additional flexibility.
Yeah, definitely.
And you cannot just do this within Dynatrace, you even can do this via API calls or from outside. So if you're interested in, that's also, I think, quite cool that you now can access also your trace data via APIs, query for them, get the subset back.
That's a great question, Mark. Does the metric extraction happen on the one agent, the active gate, or the Dynatrace cluster server or SaaS? Christoph, this one is for you.
Absolutely. So it happens in the open pipeline, which is hosted in our premises, so in Dynatrace SaaS backend. There, all the mass data gets streamed through, and you can define rules, filtering rules, and extraction rules that extract hero time series from whatever data you wanted to. There is a future plan, not sure if I can share it just yet, but without the timeline, there is a plan to move this functionality also to edge. That means ActiveGate, so on customer premises. Same processing steps, but runs on a customer premises. But that's on the plan. Right now, it runs in Dynatrace SaaS.
But certain metrics are being some of the built-in metrics are being extracted on the one agent automatically.
Yes, absolutely, of course. Any infrastructure metrics, process metrics, Kubernetes metrics are being created, extracted on one agent already directly.
I'm wondering if we have any other questions coming up, or Thomas, Christoph, any other topics you guys would like to bring up?
As we are in the pipeline topic still with metric creation on the one hand side, one new functionality that is great is that it's now possible to store your traces as long as you want. So up to 10 years is now supported. I think this is also a big change. Beforehand, we had a default retention period of 10 days with the full details. And now customers have really the freedom to define custom buckets to tell, yeah, this I want to have my traces from my card checkout request, keep them longer, or from my checkout service for any reason. And that's pretty cool. And that's also a long waited for functionality that is now available and that we are now exposing to customers.
Yeah, actually, that's a pretty big win. I think the retention control in Grail are pretty huge, not to mention that the fact that you can even delete some of the data after the fact if you need to for compliance or other reasons. So it's a whole big topic, a huge big win for the new traces model. Now we got some cool questions from YouTube. So we got a question about certification or learning path, becoming a subject matter experts on Dynatrace. I know there are plenty of those, but I'm not up to date on the details. Thomas, are you?
Yes, so there are the Dynatrace University is there. There are certifications already there, different levels from beginner, intermediate, master. I think they're now called perhaps a little bit different. But the Dynatrace University is a great resource to get started. I'm not sure if the new tracing app is already part of it or DQL, but I know it's already worked on to get all this material into the university, the Dynatrace University.
And we were asked about, are we planning to develop this for the managed environment? So, Christoph, should you take it or I?
So Grail and DQL is not going to come to managed. We have a good roadmap for managed as well. There's good features coming there as well, but the current plan is to not bring Grail and DQL to Grail to managed.
Yeah, unfortunately, Grail is heavily dependent on cloud technologies, and bringing it to managed is just not realistic. But as Christoph mentioned, we are working on some other cool stuff for managed. Mukesh asked us about Monaco or Terraform. What's the way ahead? I think that's a good question. A lot of the advanced Dynatrace configuration can only be done in Monaco today, but we are extending our Terraform support over time. It's a matter of balance, I guess. If you're a huge Terraform fan, you can get away with it to a certain degree. But at least for now, Monaco configuration is more advanced in Dynatrace. And we got distributed traces mobile app. Mark, I'm not sure if that's a joke or missing something. We can start talking about the mobile support, because we do have a lot of mobile support for digital experience monitoring and trace collection for mobile, and a lot of good stuff there. But we're not experts. Oh, Mark is actually saying that Terraform works better from some of multi-tenant pipelines. So that's actually great to hear. I'm personally a huge fan of Terraform, so it's great to hear that we're making progress and that you're happy with the results for your configuration, which seems probably pretty advanced if you're into multi-tenant environments. Any other thoughts, guys, you want to share about any of the recent questions or other topics you want to bring up? As I told you guys earlier, when we're making these live sessions, we never know if we're going to have hundreds of participants or just a handful. But apparently, when LinkedIn goes down, then we end up with a handful rather than hundreds. So some days it's been fun. Alex, I'll give it a few other seconds for additional questions to come in. What's the next new app that we don't know about yet? That's a question.
That would be always good to know what you know, but there is quite something in the backlog about apps. I mentioned already, so digital experience monitoring, the whole digital experience monitoring solution is now heading forward to add apps for their capabilities out here. Right now, we are driving forward, especially tracing app, services app, and the logs app from an observability solution. So that is, I think, a key point that will improve. And we have a lot of planned things here in that case.
Yeah. So before we kind of take this new question by Domen, Christoph, what's the app you're looking forward to the most?
Oh, I have to say, I'm also looking forward to RAM, real user monitoring, because there's some great stuff coming there, and also RAM data is coming to Grail in a pretty good revamped data model that allows for much more analysis on, how are your users doing, what interactions do they do in the browser, what's the their experience, all those core performance web vital metrics are coming. And with that, new apps that allow for much more than we used to, have in RAM. So, and of course, again, all coming also to Grail, unified store, joinable with other signal types then.
Personally, I'm most excited about our new upcoming integration with the clouds. We're standardizing our hyperscaler and our data ingest integrations in a unified model. and I'm pretty excited about this. Will make integrate monitoring clouds and other environments much easier and much more streamlined, and I think that's a huge win. And sort of to wrap up with RAM, USQL will stay for managed, I guess. Christoph,
Yes, USQL will stay for managed.
Yes, will be stay managed. And with DQL, you can choose between sampled and non-sampled as you see fit, which is pretty awesome.
Exactly. You control the sampling, you control the aggregations, the filtering with much more power and flexibility compared to USQL. Yeah. And with all the goodness of the platform, which is also, extraction rules in open pipeline, or anomaly detectors or other configurations in the platform that you can do based on DQL, you can then also do on user events and sessions.
That's a tough one. Christoph, can you comment on the RAM JavaScript injection, how it works under the hood, and what the trade-offs are?
That's a great question. I know a little so far that I used to be engineering agents, not particularly on the RAM injection, but I worked on .NET Java agents for quite some time. So I know as much. The JavaScript injection works by intercepting the HTTP output stream, figuring out the right position in the HTML, in the DOM, or in the HTML to put the script tag. So the output is manipulated. And then when the browser requests that script tag, it's another interception of the web server agent, like this would be an Nginx or an Apache agent. It's a module we place in there. And it intercepts that call for the JavaScript module and then delivers that also on the fly. So that's how this works completely free of touch or configuration by a user. Just one agent installed, Nginx agent injected, and then it does these tricks to deliver RAM injection.
Oh, that's a good answer. Or now I have so many questions. I just have to choose from. So there's a request here about migration of custom Python extensions to Framework 2.0. There's a request for a new webinar on the new topology and the migration as a whole. It's a great request. Omer, please take note. I can point you in the right direction after the call to some of the guys, and you can prepare something. But I personally have nothing smart to say about the topic. Not sure any of you can contribute significantly.
Me neither. I don't not into that topic.
And now there is questions about license consumption for managed environment. I know there is stuff in the works for improving managed licensing, but again, I don't really know much. Thomas, are you?
Not too deep in the managed solution right now, to be honest. So I think that's something we can take with us.
Yeah, we can take it offline. We know it's in the works, but
what I know is that our colleagues from Managed, they're looking at the Dynatrace community. So posting their question there, I think this would definitely make sense and it will go the right direction.
Yeah. And now is actually a tough questions about distributed tracing from Mukesh about the end-to-end visibility and how it's challenging these days and how can we piece together microservices API, asynchronous calls, and what are we doing to make it happen, make it work, either in the one agent and in OTel as well?
Well, it's a very great question. So this is the reason why distributed tracing is becoming more important, because of more distributed systems, more microservice architectures, and connecting those through is a job of the instrumentation that's being done. That's OpenTelemetry or one agent. They both achieve roughly the same. The instrument, the points in code that do those calls to other services, and enrich them with trace context so that in the end they have the same trace ID and the context flows through. So either deploy one agents or deploy OpenTelemetry. Make sure the libraries that you use for calling other services are being supported, HTTP, gRPC, messaging, and so on. Usually the main libraries are always supported. And if you managed, if that's the case, the context flows and you have a full trace. Asynchronity within one system is, of course, also an instrumentation challenge, but all modern agents one agent and OpenTelemetry support, the majority of async libraries very well, so the context doesn't get lost and it's all connected together.
What I see here is that the introduction of open standards, that tracing is now becoming a commodity, makes it much easier also to raise the awareness at cloud providers to support specific technologies. Like, yeah, Christoph, you have been heavily involved already quite early on the W3C trace context. I call it invention. I think that is quite good that now the context propagation is better supported. Yeah, so I completely agree here.
What W3C trace context is a definition of a standard HTTP headers and their format in order to how to transport basically trace IDs and parent IDs. And I was working on that standard some years ago. And what it achieves is that even different tracing agent or systems can interact together. So you can have some tiers instrumented with OpenTelemetry, some with some other proprietary system, maybe AWS, and vendor agents like one agent. They can work together, share the same context, the same trace ID, and the same parent IDs. And if all of the data is being ingested into the same system, they can all be interconnected together. That was always the goal and the idea, and works pretty well nowadays.
Yeah. Awesome. So we got some questions about uploading your own machine learning models to Davis. So currently you can't upload proprietary models into Davis, but you have quite a few ways to extend the system. You can create your own apps. You can create workflows that trigger on demand. You can query the data through APIs. So you have quite a few options to access the raw data from any machine learning model you choose. Obviously, if you're looking at the question, there are some questions that you need to understand from an architecture perspective. Are you aiming for a real-time model, or you query a little bit of data quite often, potentially a workflow triggered or something like that? Or do you want something that's more batched, run after the fact, once a day, once a week, to look at data at large? You have quite a few options if you know what the data you're looking for. And there's another question from Mark about multiple RAM injection mechanisms, and can they be used simultaneously? Chris, I'm not sure if you know the answer to that, or if you should take it with the relevant support people.
Maybe Mark, you can clarify. So what one agent basically injects the JavaScript agent that's responsible for the browser monitoring and session replay, right? Not sure which other agents you would want to inject, or but we don't inject like a support like a custom injection of an arbitrary script tag or so in one agent.
I'm assuming Mark is asking about potentially injecting from multiple methods, such as from both Nginx and Java or something like that. That would be my guess.
So we support multiple technologies in that regard. Yes, Java, Node.js, Nginx, Apache. I think that's it. And .NET, as far as I know, where it's possible they serve the request and the auto injection happens.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, you can also put the script tag yourself in the HTML output, right? There's also support for that. Then the JavaScript agent is being served from somewhere else. This is also what many customers do. Puts less overhead on the output stream manipulation, right? And works also in technologies where we don't have that injection support.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense, especially so if you're looking for redundancy, that's always a good option. Just put it there yourself, and then you know it's there. We got questions about DPS license consumption. I'm not sure this is one we're capable of taking here. I would advise reaching out to your partner manager to get more materials on how to do that properly.
What I can cover here from that point, when we talk about tracing, typically there are two ways. It can be full stack monitoring. It's very simple. Just know the monitored hosts, the memory consumption, and Dynatrace keeps you yeah, you get the number out of it, and that's the licensing costs. The usage of the tracing app is completely included. So when you filter for your traces in the tracing app, that's included here. And we have your account manager can help you here to get more insights in that and have some approximation what is your usage, and that you have a good scoping here.
Mhm. We have one more questions about Nginx monitoring from She Sparks uh, about traces missing following Nginx. Any thoughts about that?
I mean, I would say create a support ticket for that. Shouldn't happen. Though how you can troubleshoot this, what I would do first is check if the downstream service you would expect to be where the trace should continue, check the HTTP headers that are incoming. If you see their X Dynatrace or the W3C headers, trace parent, trace date, like observe, what's in them. If they are completely missing, then obviously something gets lost within Nginx. Maybe there's a module running or something happening there. I can only speculate, but this is where I would start troubleshooting. But just file a support ticket. This is something we definitely want to take a look at.
So we got some few last minute questions from a lot of different topics. And as Mark mentions, there are extra steps that can be configured for deeper Nginx management. Again, please take it with support. They can help you instrument as deep as it goes. If it's still missing, then we would love to know why. And yeah, I think it's been an interesting one. It's been fun losing most of you for LinkedIn and then having you back again after a while, but I'm hoping you either heard enough or you'll follow up on the recording. Any parting words?
It was a pleasure. First time for me doing Ask Me Anything like this. So you never know what questions are coming, and that's exciting. Loved it.
Same here. Was the first time in an AMA session, but really was really cool and was fun to be here with you.
So, awesome. And She Sparks just asked another question about tracing using JSON payloads. So I think the focus on the ingestion is about using the OTel protocol, but we actually have some very interesting JSON features coming up in Grail queries and in Open Pipeline. So if you're using JSON on top of OpenTelemetry, stay on the lookout. There's going to be some interesting news this year. We got a lot of thanks. So thanks, guys, for tuning in, and goodbye.
Yeah. Thanks, Liran, for moderating. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.